Hello everyone, and welcome again to our series, Our Great Awakening. In this video today, we're going to be looking at the Gospels. And I know, Eileen, that you've done significant research around that topic for many years and produced some astounding books. And we'll be looking at those today.
Yes. Today's topic is the Gospels. And we're going to divide this into series of three. We have 3 parts here. Today is part number 1 because there's a lot to take in with the Gospels, too much to take in at one time. And before we start that, just let me remind you about what we have done previously in these series here. We are after the truth. That's what we specified here. The age of Aquarius is the age of knowledge and the age of truth, and we are after the truth. And the title of our series, we've given that the title, Our Great Awakening. And we're questioning, we're trying to get everybody to question things here because it's the questioning that awakens you. And when you awaken then, you get to the truth. We all have a responsibility to find the truth and to speak that truth. And that's what we're trying to do in this series. And the truth is very often unpalatable. And why? Because beliefs have been so deeply and so strongly instilled into us that it is very difficult to just suddenly have to let go of them and accept that they maybe are not true. And the 3 great untruths that we have discussed already in previous videos, first of all, is that the untruth, we've been told that we are separate individuals. We are not separate individuals. We are all part of the one great universal God energy. We are all one. The second great untruth that we have dealt with is the untruth that we are only this body. Well, we've explained how we are not only this body. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience for the duration of this lifetime. And the third great untruth, we've been told that God punishes. We have dealt with that too in a previous video. God doesn't punish. God is not a punishing God, and there's no judgment. And why does God not punish? God doesn't forgive, nor does he punish, because there's nothing to forgive nor nothing to punish, because karma takes care of all of that. And we dealt with that in a previous video. The untruths we have been given are no longer serving us on this part of our spiritual journey. We have freely come to this earth energy vibration dimension. We have freely come here at this point in time for a particular purpose, to assist in the seismic shift that is going on in our energy vibration here on planet Earth. We have come here to assist in that. And by hiding the truth and not facing the truth, we are not assisting. We have come to get the truth out and to push humanity, to push us all into that higher vibration level. And the question is, what are you putting your energy into? We've got to ask ourselves that. Where is your energy going? Is your energy going to finding the truth and getting the truth out? And Leonardo da Vinci said something very, very, very important. He said there are 3 classes of people. Those who see when they are shown, and those who do not see. And I want you to bear that in mind as I go through the Gospels here. You can see I've got all the paperwork in front of me here. And that's simply because, Declan, this has got to be very precise. I can't afford to get anything, even a date, I can't afford to get that wrong. That's why I've got all written here in front of me. Because it's so important that we come to grips and we get a hand on these Gospels. Because they're the foundation stone of the Roman Christian religion. And we've got to get a grip on them. Now, first of all, you often try to convince somebody by saying, and that's the Gospel truth. Well, ironically, the Gospels are not the truth, as I'm going to show you very shortly. We have the Old Testament and we have the New Testament. And the Gospels are the New Testament. So what have we been told? What have we been led to believe? What have we been taught about the Gospels? Well, first of all, we've been led to believe they were written by the disciples of Jesus. And Matthew is actually described as the scribe. The scribe is one who takes notes and writes. So, we've been led to believe they were written by the disciples of Jesus who were with Jesus on his ministry. We've been led to believe they are 4 independent versions, all supporting each other. We have been led to believe they tell the story of the life of Jesus Christ. And we've been told they are the foundation stone of Christianity. Well, if they're the foundation stone of Christianity, how come so many people who profess to be Christians have never read them? It's remarkable how many people have never actually read the Gospels. Why not? Simply because we've never been encouraged to read them. The nearest we ever came to them was as a captive audience on Sunday morning, and they were being thundered out from the pulpit at us. That's the nearest most of us ever came. And we were only there under the threat of hell. If you don't go, you're going to go to hell. And there's that thing, fear again. Fear. Anything that causes fear is not coming from a high vibration level. It's not good. It's not coming from the God vibration. Now, on all counts, the Gospels fail. What are these counts? Let me turn to the historian now, put on her historian hats for a moment, and put these through what I call the historian's sieve. The historian tests any document for authenticity. Is it authentic? He tests for reliability. Are they reliable? He tests for validity. Are they valid? He tests for bias. He tests for, is there any way we can cross-reference them with any other literature of the time to confirm what they're saying? And are they including historical accuracies or historical inaccuracies? Now, when we ask those questions that any historian asks, those are the basic foundation questions any historian asks to test any document. When we ask those questions of the Gospels, we find the Gospels fail, and not just fail, but fail miserably on all counts. The dots don't join up. The figures don't add up. And the jigsaw pieces just do not fit. We've got to accept that. First of all, they don't all tell the same stories. The virgin birth. Now, the virgin birth, any virgin birth, is a very mysterious, very unique happening. But yet, two of the Gospels don't even mention the virgin birth. And the same with the resurrection and the ascension. Now, resurrection and ascension, they are very, very, very unusual, unique events, but only two of the four Gospels mention them. Let's try and test for authenticity first of all. And no, the Gospels are not authentic. So, Declan, both the virgin birth and the resurrection and the ascension are only talked about in two of the Gospels. Now, let's try the first historian test, the test for authenticity. And when we test the Gospels for authenticity, we find the Gospels are not authentic. Why not? We've been led to believe Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, Acts of the Apostles and the letters of Paul. That's the order in which they come in the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John is like a fairy rhyme. We rhyming them off, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. But they did not come in that order, according to the dates. The first date is 50 to 60 CE. That's a long time after the supposed life of Jesus. The first one is Paul's letters. They come first. Paul didn't even know Jesus. Paul has said himself that any information he got from visions of the risen Jesus. Paul was not around in Jesus' time. After Paul's letters come Mark, not Matthew. Mark is the first of the Gospels. And he writes in 70 CE, 10 years after Paul finished. And Mark gives us the basic narrative of the supposed life of Jesus. That's where you get the basic narrative. After Mark comes Matthew, 80 to 85 CE. And what does Matthew do? Matthew copies Mark word for word, what we would call today plagiarism. Now, Mark wrote in 70 and Matthew wrote 80 to 85. How can we call those two independent writings if they're saying exactly the same thing? And how, so many years after the supposed life of Jesus, they're able to report word for word what was said and what was done exactly the same. See, the dots don't add up here. Jigsaw pieces don't fit. Then after Matthew, we have Luke and the Acts of the Apostles. Acts of the Apostles is actually a continuation of the Gospel of Luke. And they were written in 85 to 90 CE. And then last comes John, the most evangelical, if you like, of the Gospels. And he wrote in 90 to 100 CE. How can they remember in such great detail, so many years after, exactly what was said and what was done? The Gospels don't add up. We have a 25 to 30 year span there between the four Gospels. That's a lot of years. Now, why was Matthew first? Why are we told Matthew was first and not Mark? Simply because it's Matthew who starts with the birth of Jesus, whereas Mark starts with the baptism of the adult Jesus. So if we're given the narrative, that's why we start with Matthew. But they're not four independent writings. They're not authentic. They fail that authenticity test. And those names, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, they were pseudonyms, which was common at the time. Most writers use pseudonyms, but they're not Jewish names. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John are not Jewish, Arabic or Hebrew names. Now, let's test them for reliability. And again, they fail this test remarkably. They are not reliable. And why not? Because if you read them parallel, you can find the holes and the contradictions and the inaccuracies and the improbabilities. But if you read them one by one, you won't notice so much because you'll have forgotten what you read in the first one. But read them parallel and you'll find all the holes that are so obvious. There are a lot of contradictions, full of them. And they are irreconcilable contradictions. There are loads of historical inaccuracies and fabrications. For example, we're told that when Jesus was born in Bethlehem, the reason why Joseph was there was because he went to fill a census. There is no historical record by any historian of the time of any census taken at that time. That's a fabrication, a story made up for some purpose. And I'm going to come to that soon. Why was that story made up? And the second thing, there is no massacre of the innocents recorded by any historian at that time. Another made-up story, another fabrication. But why? Again, I'll explain that later. The events in the Gospels are highly improbable, absolutely incredible, and impossible. And if we question them, what are we told? We're told that nothing is impossible with God. That's the answer we get. Nothing is impossible with God. Well, is that not an opt-out clause, if ever there was one? Now, let's talk about them as historical documents. The Gospels are not historical documents. They belong in the field of literature. They're all written anonymously, and they're not written in the first person. They're written in the third person, objectively. The writers have distanced themselves from the action. And they were first written in Greek by highly literate people or person, not by poor, illiterate fishermen. And Greek was not Jesus' first language. Greek was the language the Gospel was first written in, but Jesus' language was Arabic and Hebrew. The stories we read in the Gospels, that's all they are. They are just stories. They're made up. They're improbable. Why do we have this problem with the Gospels in not believing that they're true? Look at the fairy tales. Do any of us ever think that Little Red Riding Hood existed? Or Cinderella existed? Or Snow White existed? Because if we do, then if we think they're real, then Houston, we got a problem. They are not real. And the events in the Gospels are not real either. The characters are not real. They're made up in a set of parables to get across certain messages and teachings to us, as was common at the time. People wrote in parables at the time. Now, for example, let me take a few incidents here. The angel appears to Mary to tell her she's going to be the mother of Jesus, the Immaculate Conception. And the angel appears to Joseph to tell Joseph to take care of Mary. Now, how did the people who wrote the Gospels 20, 30, 40 years later. How did they know about that? Did Jesus and Mary, Joseph and Mary go out and blab it all out and tell everybody? So where is the information coming from here? We need to question. And we need then, by question, we will waken up. Now, in the Gospels we're told that Jesus had a mother-in-law. Peter had a mother-in-law, I beg your pardon, Peter had a mother-in-law. We're told that Peter's mother-in-law was sick, and Jesus went to Peter's mother-in-law's house to cure her, and he did that. So, the only way you can procure a mother-in-law is by being married. Is there any other way? Well, I don't know of it. So Peter must have been married in order to have a mother-in-law. And the other thing we need to question is, Jesus had brothers and sisters. The Gospels tell us that. Jesus had brothers and sisters. Mary had other children after she had Jesus. Jesus was her firstborn son, according to the Gospels. But we're never told that, because the celibacy of the church is dependent on us knowing the opposite. We have been taken in. The church obviously has specifically selected material to suit their own narrative. And that's why we were never encouraged to read them, because we might find something which would throw their whole narrative out. And the date 367 CE is very important, because that was the date when the church father Athanasius first brought the idea of the four Gospels as the foundation stone of the new Roman Christian church. That new Roman Christian church, which was not founded at the time of Jesus, as we've been led to believe it was, but at the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, convened by the Roman Emperor Constantine, who brought all representatives from all the sprawling Roman empires together to try and come to some sort of cohesion, to get a plan to bring them all together, to unite them. This is the end of part 1 of our Gospels, and we'll come back to you in a few days' time with part 2. Until then, namaste.
Namaste.